So, dear students, today I will discuss with you about China and the rest of the world. China, who is following some policies, and through that policy, he tries to dominate the world. It seems it's a war. China versus the rest of the world. China, through that policy, it's trying to influence the Asian and African continents. In Asia, the countries like Sri Lanka, Maldives, Myanmar, Pakistan, and lot many African countries like Zambia, Mozambique, and so many countries. Earlier, they followed one policy that is Islamic slicing, and they are very much perfect in that one. And that they followed with India also. Now, they have initiated another policy that is the debt trap diplomacy. This debt trap diplomacy is very much successful also. In this lecture, I will tell you how China is following this policy and how India, along with its other countries, that is America, Japan, and Australia, they have followed the policy. That policy is the Quad. Quad is basically to control the Indo-Pacific challenges which are created by China. Now, with major European powers like the UK, France, Germany, now taking off their attention in the UN forums on China's human rights violations. And it depends on whether the Joe Biden administration will work jointly with its European partners in dealing with China. There are efforts to dominate the Indo-Pacific regions. China has territorial and maritime boundary disputes with Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and so on. China regularly uses the force in violation of the international law of the seas to take control of maritime space of its neighbors, like in the South China Sea. India's recent naval exercises in the Arabian Sea with the US and its partner in the Quad have displayed a readiness to work with those who share its concerns about China's characteristics. China's ambitions in promoting its 5G Hawaii communication services are now facing opposition across the Europe. With the commencement of the winter, it would be difficult for China to mount major operations on full of snow mountains. One should, however, never forget that the Chinese are masters in the salami slicing, which they have followed in the strategic spaces like the Galwan Valley with India. One hopes that India and China can reach an agreement on the modalities for delineating and respecting the so-called the line of actual control in Ladakh and other places. The line of actual control is a term which has never been clearly defined. This year, the 2020, no doubt nationally and internationally, there was a lot of attention for the pandemic that is COVID-19. It is a source of tension, not for India, rather for entire world. But in India's foreign policy, there were two significant developments this year, apart from the pandemic, and another very important event which is going on nowadays, that is the farmers' agitation, which is currently in operation. The first was India's active participation in activities in the Quad, a significant security-oriented groups. This was obviously in response to the threats China poses on its borders with India. And indeed, across the India and Pacific Oceans, China moved troops into the Daspan region in Ladakh, commencing in the early months of 2020. This would enable China's forces to threaten India's strategic airbase in Dol-Oldibek, and therefore to go beyond the Karakoram Pass, crossing the LOC in J&K. This is the first. And the second is India's response aggressively in the Pangong Lake region of Ladakh, deploying its forces on strategic heights, which were unoccupied. Indian troops, backed by armored personnel, carriers, tanks, and artillery, they captured the control of these strategic heights in Ladakh, and they deployed their forces, and they never bothered about the China's PLA, People's Liberation Army. These operations were across a large part of the land, and it is Pangong on the Pangong Lake. Recently, a visit of Mr. S. Jaishankar in Tokyo in the month of October, this visit was taken by our External Affairs Minister. No doubt, the pandemic was there, severe pandemic is there, but even then he attended the Foreign Ministers' meet of Quad, which consists of USA, India, Japan, and Australia. Jaishankar stressed that the Quad is committed to a rule-based international order respecting principles like freedom of navigation in the seas, respect for territorial integrity, and the peaceful resolution of disputes. In the Indo-Pacific region, amidst continuous tensions on India's borders, US Secretary of State Michael Pompeo and Defense Secretary Mark Esper arrived for meeting with their counterparts in India and on the call of Prime Minister Mr. Modi. It's a 2+2 dialogue, which was very successful. How? India signed a significant military agreement with the USA for the sharing of sensitive satellite data, as the two sides held a top-level security dialogue aimed at countering China's growing power in the region. India will now have a real-time access to intelligence information on developments across its border with China. The US perceptions of China's policies and the threats it poses in Indo-Pacific region have now been written out in the 48-page report titled The Elements of the China Challenges, published by the Office of the Secretary of State. The State Department report contains details of how China has ensured that developing countries across Asia and Africa are drawn into a debt trap because of the terms of the Chinese assistance, and these countries have been compelled to mortgage their lands, ports, and development projects to China. This methodology began with the aid for the Hambantota port, built in a constituency of the Rajapakse family. Hardly any ship breathed in the port of Hambantota, which Sri Lanka was compelled to hand over to China. This port would, in course of time, will have vessels carrying Chinese supplies across the Indian Ocean. A similar effort is made in Myanmar through financing the construction of the Bay of Bengal port of Kayufeku. China is also pressurizing Myanmar to permit the construction of infrastructure and industrial projects in the location linking Kyafu port to the Yunnan province of China. Aung San Suu Kyi of Myanmar and her generals appear determined to see that the costs are affordable. In the meantime, India has built the Sitwe port in Myanmar for transporting goods from its northeastern states through the Bay of Bengal to Calcutta. Given the rapid growth of the electronics industry in India, New Delhi needs to be proactive in building its defense and consumer electronics industries, including startups, in collaboration with Taiwan. India's present overdependence on China in this and other various affairs has to be finished at all. Electronics giants like Huawei are really strategic instruments of the Chinese market. China's 60 billion investment in the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, will inevitably lead to Pakistan mortgage land and project space, most probably in and around the Gwadar port, because it's a huge amount and it will be very difficult for Pakistan to return this huge amount to China. China adopted the same strategy in Maldives by saddling it with construction projects it could not afford. Beijing was stopped by action jointly taken by India and the US. After the previous Maldivian government was voted out in office. The same pattern has been repeated across the African continent, the Chinese aid and creating the debt traps, followed by attempts to take over the projects and the lands. There is no transfer of knowledge or technology to the recipient countries in China's projects. And this is the debt trap diplomacy started by China. This is a new policy for the colonization. No doubt, colonization was there in the 18th, 19th and 20th centuries. But in this 21st century, China have adopted the new system of colonization, that is debt trap diplomacy. Thank you very much.